Good evening. Welcome to Democratic Television, television by Democrats for Democrats. We are very excited that you have joined us tonight, and we hope to have a very interesting and in-depth discussion about 2020, what's ahead, what we can look forward to, and where we see opportunities. I'm LaKenya Middlebrook, and I'm delighted to be your host this evening. I'm also the chair of the Knox County Democratic Party, and again, we thank you for joining us. We are delighted to be joined tonight by two dynamic guests. We have joining us Caroline Mann, who is an Emerge 2019 graduate.
That's right.
And is involved in a lot of different things in our community, which she'll tell us a little bit about a little bit later, and has worked on campaigns in various capacities, and so we're very, very glad that she is joining us tonight. And we also have Greg Mackay. Greg will be familiar to a lot of us because he is also one of our esteemed DTV hosts. He has served our election commission diligently as director of elections, and was a fantastic candidate for the Tennessee legislature in 2018 in Tennessee House District 18, and ran a fantastic race. And so Caroline, Greg, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And again, we hope to have a very robust discussion, I think an interesting discussion as we look forward to 2020. And right now, you know, there's been so much focus in the country, in the state, and locally for that matter, on what's happening on the national level. There's a lot of interest. We have a lot of candidates, but folks really have not started to dig into the local races that we have coming up. And I think we have a lot of opportunities coming up in 2020 that we can take advantage of as Democrats. Of course, we have our county commission races and a few other county races that will be coming up. But on the commission level, we'll have districts 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9, I believe, which are a lot of seats, a lot of turnover. And right now, we have only one seat, that's District 1, held by a Democrat. And in the last cycle in 16, I guess that would have been, there was some really good opportunities that we came very, very close in. Most specifically, District 2 was a very, very close race, and so we see a lot of opportunities there. And then in addition to our county races, of course, we'll have all of our state house seats up again, and another state senate race. We'll have Senate seat 6 up, and of course, the congressional seat in U.S. Congressional District 2, and another U.S. Senate race. So we've got a lot going on, and a lot to look forward to, and a lot of great opportunities. But I'm, like I said, really excited to have the two of you all here, and would love to kind of bring you into this conversation a little in talking about, Greg, we'll kind of start with you. As a candidate, kind of what was it that spurred you to run? How did you make your decision to run? And coming out of that run, what were some lessons that you gleaned that maybe you didn't expect, or some challenges that that you didn't anticipate, and kind of what you learned from that run?
Sure. Yes. Thank you, LaKenya. I used to be the administrator of elections here, and in order to run elections effectively, you have to work with both parties.
Right.
And I had a reputation for being able to do that, for looking beyond party politics and just getting the job done. Of course, we modernized the office. We took early voting from 20% of the people voted early when I got there, and 75% voted early when I left. And like I said, we did it. I think I left it in better shape than I found it. So I had that reputation. And I think we needed to do the same thing on a state level.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many issues that affects people's day-to-day lives, whether it's health care, education for their children, and others that, you know, we just need to sit down and work together, I think, with both parties. And of course, I was running against a fellow who, you know, did not have the same reputation for working well with others as I did. And that spurred me on to run. It was mostly the people in the community. I had so many people that asked me to run. I finally just decided to go ahead and do it. And I enjoyed running. It was a lot of fun until election night. But I'm a real estate broker by trade, and you have to work together with people, you know, to get houses sold, to get real estate transactions done. So I have a reputation for doing that. And I think that's what we're lacking, maybe, is some civility in the process. I think we can disagree about things. Right. Without being enemies, and we're not seeing that with the leadership in Washington, and what's been going on in Nashville the last year or so is just terrible. Just the meanness, we've got to put an end to it at some point. Right. So that's what got me going. So
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that really impressed, I think, a lot of people about your campaign and your race was how cleanly you ran the race and how focused you were on the issues that were important to people. And I think we saw the benefit of that. Even though it wasn't the result that we had hoped for, and especially that you had hoped for. I mean, you came within a few hundred votes. I think you got about what 48%, 48.5% of the vote. What was really your focus in connecting with people? How did you make those inroads and connections? Was it talking about issues? Was it pushing the idea and reinforcing the idea of bringing back this level of civility that we have lost or missed? Because I think that people do feel like something is, like a lot of things are lacking, and we can talk about what some of those things are. On the state level especially, that we are not seeing, a lot of folks are not seeing the impact, the positive impact of government in their lives.
Right.
And so what were some of the things that you found most resonated with people you were engaging with?
Well, I mean, for the most part, I tried to stay away from, controversial social issues where people could argue about things that, while they're important, what affects people is their children. And I think the focus of state government should be on our children. That means we need to expand Medicaid, so that there's some 300,000 children, 300,000 people in Tennessee that don't have any health insurance, or that would have health insurance if we expanded the Medicaid program. And of course, supporting public schools. I've never seen a voucher school or a charter school that was any better than a well-run public school, and I think that resonated with people. I did it the old-fashioned way, just go out and knock on doors every afternoon. I met thousands of people, and the one thing that surprised me, and I saw a statistic the other day, my wife and I were talking about it, is there are a lot of people in the district, the economy's going well and everything, supposedly, especially for the billionaires, but there's a lot of people that are struggling. I would see a lot of beat-up old cars that needed to be replaced, a lot of houses that weren't in the best of shape, and a lot of people, they say there's jobs. Well, yeah, some people had 2 and 3 of them, I saw a statistic that said that 42% of the people in this country work for $15 an hour or less. A third of them work for $12 an hour or less.
Right.
Now, that's not the American dream. It'd be different if we were in a poor nation, but we're in the richest nation on earth. There are literally billionaires that well, everybody knows what the difference in. And that's, to me, it's dangerous. We need to spread it around a little somehow, some way.
Right.
And it's just not good, because what drives our economy is the middle class, because they spend money. And, so that's what I learned. It's kind of a long answer, but.
Yeah, well, and I think that, a lot of those issues even trickle down, even though there may not be as much that we can do on the local level. I think that we can take some of those same issues that are important to folks and that you're talking to them about on a state level and translate them to how they impact us on our local government level. So when we think about employment opportunities and economic growth and development and, employability and wages.
Even
that
parks and recreation. Things
well,
that people can do
that
don't cost a lot of money if you got 3 or 4 kids.
Right. Well, and even, if you are a person who gets up every day and goes to a job or 2 or 3 jobs, but each of those jobs is a minimum wage job, you're going to have a hard time being able to afford housing.
Right.
And when we look around our community and the amount of affordable housing is shrinking.
That's a huge issue.
Transportation is an issue.
Housing costs have skyrocketed.
These are all issues that there's a trickle-down effect, to use that term. There really is a trickle-down effect from what's happening on the national level, the state level, into our local politics. And I think that there's opportunities to talk about those issues on a very localized level and discuss those issues in a way that resonate with people in terms of how it directly impacts their lives. And, Caroline, I know that you have not been a candidate. You're kind of like me and have worked kind of on the other side of campaigns. Talk a little bit about what motivated you, kind of what we talk with candidates, we tell them to think about their why. What's your why for getting involved in the political processes? And then you can kind of build from there about your experiences and tell us a little bit about your experiences with Emerge and what Emerge is. And
okay.
Yeah.
I think my whys are my 3 kids.
Yeah.
I've got a freshman at Pellissippi, a sophomore at STEM, and an 8th grader at Bearden Middle. When 2016 happened, this is a common refrain,
Yeah.
and I've heard it so many times, and I've said it so many times. That was a really a clarion wake-up call for me. I had not been super attentive or involved prior to that, but that had to change. So my kids motivate me, and all of my friends in the communities that I've gotten close with over the last several years keep me going.
Yeah.
I realized that if I were to be as effective as I wanted to be, I needed to have some knowledge and some resources. So when I learned about the Emerge Tennessee program, which is a program that trains Democratic women to run for office, I wanted to get involved in that. I knew that other women in Tennessee had done it. 40% of the Emerge candidates who ran for office were successful.
That's awesome.
So that's a fabulous statistic.
Yeah.
It speaks to the training that the program provides.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take part. I hope to run for office myself one day. And I think when you guys were talking about the national issues and the issues that arise in Nashville, I think that's where some of our greatest opportunities as Democrats in Knoxville and Knox County lie. We've got fabulous messaging opportunities because we actually talk about the issues that affect people's daily lives. And I think we've got, the other side has about a 2-generation head start on us.
Right.
They've been messaging really well, and they've got their own information ecosystem that it's hard to compete against.
Yeah.
But I think if we build a community, unify, and bring in the whole diverse, all the communities that we address, we're going to have a better chance in 2020 if we get our message out.
Absolutely, and you said a couple of things there that that I kind of want us to delve a little bit deeper into. One of them, we'll start with kind of that messaging piece, right? And I think you're absolutely right that there's a great opportunity for us as Democrats to be clear and concise. Sometimes that's where we really struggle, is being concise in the messaging and consistent in the messaging. You know, and you're right, you know, there has been a concerted effort by, you know, Republicans and conservative groups, not necessarily directly related to the Republican Party, but there has been a concerted effort to be concise and clear and consistent in what their messaging is, and to find opportunities to get that message out. But those messages don't always necessarily speak to the issues that are directly impacting people. And when you look at the policies attached to those messaging, they're definitely working against people. And so I think that we have to be creative about how we get our message out, and showing consistently that our message and our beliefs and our policies that are attached to these messages are actually going to impact your lives for the better. That we are actually here to represent you, because a lot of, I think, what we're seeing, and you kind of alluded to this, and you did too, a lot of what we're seeing are representatives who don't represent the values of their community.
Right.
They are not doing what their community sent them there to do.
Yeah.
And so we have to be clear and forceful in saying to them, this is what you're telling me you want in your community. This is what I know you want in your community because I'm your neighbor. And that's not what our representatives are doing. And we have the power to bring them back home and send somebody who will represent us.
Can I give you an example
Yeah.
of messaging? For I don't know how many years they've been saying taxation is theft, taxation is theft, until people start to believe it, young kids start to believe it. We need to speak the real truth, which is taxation is the price that you pay to live in a civilized society.
Right.
Taxation builds the airports.
builds
Taxation
our
builds the road to
Yep.
get you to the airports, the roads to get you to work. It puts your kids at Pellissippi. My daughter goes there too. It's a great school. It puts your kids at the University of Tennessee. It does basic research.
Right.
Taxation is the price you pay. Now, we want a fair taxation system. We want something equitable to where people that get up and go to work every day don't get the short end of the stick all the time. But this idea that taxation is theft is wrong.
Yeah.
So, and we need to start now, maybe 20 years from now, everybody will be
takes a
saying it.
long
We need to
time,
say it
yeah.
everywhere we go.
Yeah, and I think what you were talking about having the power to recall elected officials who aren't serving their communities. So I see it as a two-pronged problem. We've got the messaging that, as you're saying, and I agree with you, needs to be consistent and powerful and communal. But then if we don't get the voters engaged, that's the crux of the problem. With Tennessee being 49th in the country in turnout, that's a problem.
Yeah, you know, and one of the challenges I think that we face over and over and over again is how to engage voters. And it's a hard challenge, you know,
It is hard.
but I think that a big part of it is meeting them where they are, which is hard. Because if they're not voting, then more than likely they're not really on anybody's radar, and so you have to kind of find where folks are, which I've been really proud on the local party level, seeing some of our precincts and districts really taking very seriously this idea of finding unregistered folks or infrequent voters and engaging them around what the barriers are and challenges are to them voting, why they are not participating in the process, and talking to them about the issues that are important to them and building those relationships, which I think is a great opportunity for us in this period, because it's really hard. We all know it's really hard to do registration level work during an election cycle, but we have to find those points of entry to get folks invested in the process. Folks have just become, I think a lot of folks are really disenchanted and disaffected.
Yeah,
they
I
just
think you're
feel
right.
like the
I think you're right.
process
It doesn't make any
difference. It
You know,
doesn't matter.
The one thing I noticed, I hate to say this, but it's true, is the one thing I noticed most when I was running is how many people just didn't really care. And I was going to see, when I knocked on doors, we knocked on thousands of doors. We knocked on doors with people that we thought would vote. Okay, so it was every third person, every fourth or fifth house. And even of those people, so many of them just, you can tell looking in their eyes when you knock on their door, they just didn't care.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I have the answer to that.
Right.
We're hoping you do.
I hope we can come up with something. But
Yeah.
I do think it's a generational thing in that it will take time to correct, because if you look at it from that perspective in Tennessee, it's easy to see why they think it doesn't matter. So if you were doing it,
It's
don't have an impact.
it's a self-fulfilling
Exactly.
prophecy.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
I
what
think
it
too,
is.
taking civics out of the school was a big mistake.
Yeah.
We've got people, when I was at the election commission, I would go and talk to any group that wanted to hear
Yeah.
me talk. And this homeschool group called me once and wanted me to get together. Every 2 weeks they got together with these kids. They were from 11th grade on down to 3rd grade. Okay, there were maybe 15, 20 of them. They didn't know anything. They didn't know what a bill was. They didn't know what the Congress did. They didn't know what the Supreme Court was. It was frightening.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was kind of one of the things that
If you don't know.
Yeah. One of the things that we maybe have to consider, and it's again going to be very long range planning. We have to play the
Right.
long game here. Is what some alternative education opportunities are, because if these are not opportunities that our neighbors and friends and community members are getting through the school system or other avenues that typically supported that,
Right.
then what opportunities can we create to engage folks around why these things matter, and why it's necessary for them to be involved,
And even just
especially
the mechanics of it.
just the mechanics of
When I
it
was at
and,
the
and how to
election
do it.
commission,
Yeah.
The word I would use to describe was confusion.
Yeah.
People didn't know the different districts, whether it's county commission or city council, where do I vote, when do I? They just didn't know. They were confused.
Yeah.
Sometimes I got confused. It's so complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. You know,
But-
I was telling somebody the other day that, you know, well, in 2020 we're going to vote 3 times, and they were like, "Wait, what?" Just because,
Yeah.
you know, the process
Yeah.
can be overwhelming, and if you March, August, and November, and so if you're not following it, it's easy to get lost in that shuffle, and it's like, what am I
It really
doing?
is.
What am I voting for again? But one of the other things that you mentioned that I kind of wanted to delve into for a few minutes and kind of hear from both of y'all about. Because one of the things that I think is really important, and one of the things that we've seen over the course of the last several cycles on the Democratic side, and I think why we're seeing more momentum and movement, is that we've been able to recruit strong candidates. We've been able to recruit folks that people want to connect to and feel invested in. People want to volunteer for them. People want to vote for them. The candidates want to get out there and share their message. And one of the things that I heard you say when you were talking about your Emerge experience is that it occurred to you that maybe you needed to do some preparation, right? And so kind of talk a little bit about how important for both of you all that kind of preparation is, and what opportunities you were able to find that either those opportunities came to you or you sought them out that helped you feel supported as a candidate and helped you feel more prepared as a candidate.
The Emerge program gave me a lot of tactical experience and training. So you talk about how to use Vote Builder as part of it, how to go about pursuing endorsements, how to budget for your campaign, how to recruit volunteers, how to manage volunteers. So a lot of the nitty-gritty stuff that somebody who's never been involved in a campaign before really doesn't even know how to anticipate. So that was a great introduction. Experts from all over the state came in, all over the country actually. And then we met with candidates, we met with elected officials. So that experience, I think, will give somebody the confidence. If they're inspired to do it, they'll give them the confidence to run, and will enable them to run a very well-organized campaign. Yeah. So that was important for me.
Well, let me think. I worked in the Gore campaign.
Okay.
It was Albert Gore.
Yeah. Oh, senior.
1968. I was knocking
my
on
mind went
doors.
to junior. I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Knocking on doors. I was 14 years old. So I've just always been interested in politics. Let me tell you this. When I ran, the local party was tremendous help to me. They had interns that we had raised money to pay a little bit. They didn't pay them much. But Gillette, I'm trying to think of her first name. Savannah Gillette.
And Kelly May.
Kelly May were tremendous help to me. Just, we'd get in a jam sometime and say, hey, can you help us with this? And they would be there every time. The state party was tremendous. They sent people down here to help me. There was one guy I used to call, I'd call him when he was in Memphis and ask him stuff, and he would answer me. And they also did a training before the election that my campaign manager, Chris Barber, and I went to. And it was tremendously helpful, just in terms of the nuts and bolts, the, how do you raise money? How do you do this? How do you do that? They helped me set up a system for what we call call time. You have to call for an hour every morning if you're going to be a candidate. You got to sit down and make calls for an hour, and to keep track of it. And they showed me how to do that. And actually, everybody said it was going to be terrible, but to me, it was just kind of a game. I'd call people up and insult them and say, come on, send me some money, man. What's wrong with you?
Shame them into
my friends. Yeah, people I know, of course, not strangers. But it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And anyway, I had a lot of different help because, politics is a team sport. You have to remember that.
Absolutely.
It's not just one person out there running this stuff. It's, you find somebody to kind of get up front, but you need a team behind you. And I had a team. I had tons of volunteers. I remember looking out election eve, and my headquarters was full of people.
Yeah.
They were making calls, they were doing this, they were doing that, and it was very gratifying to know that the whole, I even took a picture and put it on Facebook, and it was very gratifying to see the level of support that I got from other people, because you can't do this alone.
Right.
Yeah, that must be.
Yeah, it was fun.
Fantastic. So I'll ask you, each of you all, this, as a person who has been a candidate and has worked on campaigns, and a person who has worked on campaigns and hopefully will be a candidate at some point in the not too distant future. What would you all say are the most important characteristics or attributes for a strong candidate?
Passion, but not manufactured passion. You have to really know why you're running, what you want to accomplish, and have a plan to get there. I think you need to be able to inspire people to want, like you said, to have a team gather around you. You have to be able to communicate why you're doing this and how you hope to be able to contribute to make all your volunteers' lives better, and even the people who didn't vote for you, make their lives better.
I think it's listening, being able to listen, really listen to people. And that's not just true for being a candidate. It's true in my real estate business. It's true in everything that you do. People, so many times they don't listen, they just talk, and they don't hear what people are trying to tell them. People will tell you everything if you just be quiet long enough and listen. So I think that's important.
Yeah. I think both of those are absolutely right. And I would add to that list actual investment in your community. So how connected are you to the community that you're wanting to represent, right?
Exactly.
Because if you aren't already engaged and invested, and then it's gonna be hard for you to really represent those folks, or for them to feel comfortable that you are going to represent them. And we were talking a little bit earlier about knowing your why. I always encourage people, if your why begins and ends with you, then you probably shouldn't run.
Right, exactly.
That's a good rule.
But in the few minutes we have left, what would you say? So we talked a little bit about candidates, for those folks who are feeling like you were in 2016 and just need to get off the bench, but running for office isn't necessarily their avenue. What would you encourage folks to do to be more involved and to really help move the needle in 2020 and help bring about real change in our communities and elect some Democrats?
I'm doing this a little bit with my daughter, who just turned 18 last November, so she voted for the first time recently. I put the League of Women Voters voter guide in front of her and said, look, you can vote, here are your choices, go do some research. I don't think everybody's gonna do that, but I think talking to people, and as you said, being able to listen to their responses, but for a long time I didn't talk about politics. It didn't seem polite, but now it's necessary. So I think being able to hold those conversations, turn people on if they're interested and capable of, looking into things and finding candidates who speak to them, is going to help tip the needle a little bit.
Excellent. What do you say, Greg?
Well, I would do two things. Number one, if you got the time, get involved in the campaign. Help somebody, come call the party or find a candidate that you like and get involved and do a little bit of work. You can do as little or as much as you want. The second thing, and it's more of a grassroots thing and it's so much easier, is talk to people that you know. And when you find people that you feel agree with you, that are Democrats or at least want to see some more equity in this society of ours and some more maybe progressive ideas, then keep up with those people and make it your job. Find 5 people, make it your job to make sure they vote. And vote early. Just keep a list of 5 people somewhere and you make sure those 5 people go and vote. It could make a tremendous difference because it's all about turnout. It's about who votes.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. And I would add to that also, and it kind of speaks a little bit to that last point you were making about finding kind of what I like to call find your tribe, find
exactly.
your people. I would encourage any of our viewers to visit our website. It's www.knoxvilledemocrats.org and find your district meeting, because that's a great place. Is if you're looking to engage, it can be really intimidating sometimes. You want to talk to folks, but you don't know exactly what to say, and you don't know how to respond if they want to talk about certain issues that you don't feel as comfortable with. Our district meetings are a great way to engage with other like-minded people and start to kind of have some of those conversations in a safe space. And they're also a great opportunity to get educated on issues, so that when you're talking to your friends, when you're talking to your family, when you're talking to your neighbors, you can go in and feel confident in sharing some information about issues and not feel intimidated. And so I would encourage everybody to do that, so that we're preparing ourselves and we're ready to be engaged and involved. Absolutely. Join a campaign and help. We need everyone to participate in 2019, going into 2020. We have a lot of challenges, but we have a lot of opportunities. And so we really, really thank you all for being engaged and involved and for tuning in. And we hope that you enjoyed this program and that you'll join us next week. Thank you.